Good day, everyone. I hope you're all doing really well. Take a moment to appreciate just how beautiful Wriothesley's ship is, and then take another moment to ask yourself the question, can I touch it? Can we physically stand on Wriothesley's ship? And the answer is obviously no, because there is this giant thing called the cube that surrounds the ship, and it's basically impenetrable. So most people aren't even going to be able to break out of bounds, let alone go into the cube. But if you're like me, you'll be able to get inside the cube. And now the question is this just an elaborate PNG? And the answer is, in my assessment, yes. I think the whole thing is just a very, very thinly modeled piece of texture, and then they've just slapped a bit of a collision barrier around the edges of it. So that is the TLDR answer for people that are impatient. But for those of you that are willing to go with me on a bit of a journey, I'm going to explain a couple of things, how Kokomi can phase through certain sections of a ship, which kind of proves that you can't really stand on it, and also why she's in this weird state. But obviously every journey has a beginning, and our beginning is going to be here in Wriothesley's office, because how the heck do you even get to the ship? Well, by using certain means to go out of bounds. I mean, it's not really that difficult. You can phase through the walls here in Wriothesley's office, and then by being an absolute out of bounds connoisseur like myself with excellent pristine precision motion, you'll be able to stand on this ledge. No, I'm kidding, you're gonna fail the first couple of tries, but basically if you do get this right, effectively you'll be able to stand in a very, very special spot. And the Genshin devs really made this incredibly difficult in terms of getting to the ship. You can't go through the building. Normally we can phase through using Geo Traveler and Zhongli, but in this case we actually have to physically go around the entire shipyard. You'll be surprised at the fact that you're only seeing the ship from within the halls, but this entire area is massive in terms of the scope of how much gameplay can be done. In any case, one of the things that you'll need to successfully climb out is obviously Geo Traveler, a Chaska or a Wanderer, and then just a lot of patience. And if you do fail, hey, well, good luck going back to Wriothesley's office and trying to break out again. Okay, but in any case, once you get to the ship, if you're like me and you've done the 4.2 Archon quest on your main account, which is what I'm showing right here, there is no ship. It is completely gone, but you know what remains? The cube remains, and this cube still blocks you from going through. So typically how the ship works is, because of that external collision that they've put on the outside, if you try and hit it, you'll hit it with Chaska's arrows, but in this case you can see that the entire collision and the PNG is kind of gone. So what about this cube? How does this cube actually work? Well, you can see here that anything you try and throw inside the cube, like a Baron Bunny, is obviously going to be repelled, but there is a way to get in, and there's just a bit of a hint there with Kokomi, but I'm not going to say any more. But effectively the cube acts in a similar way to a Shrine of Depth. Now, if you've been in the overworld, you've gone under the map and resurfaced inside a Shrine of Depth, it's kind of a bit fun. It's quite a bit of fun to try it out. You'll notice that you can't move. You're literally, your character is kind of stuck. You can only edge around the walls, and obviously the chest won't open, but it's like this, you've got this constant pressure pushing your character back. And now obviously if you perform a certain little glitch, you can get inside the cube, but that's going to require a couple of special things, which I'll explain in just a bit. But effectively inside the cube your character can mostly not move, or you'll be able to move at a very, very slow pace. And just to appreciate the collision on the ship here, just you can see how I'm tracing out the collision that Hoyos put on the PNG here with Sichuan's arrows. And trust me, I've tried a lot of things. I've tried a lot of different characters, Night Soul characters, many different variations over the last few months, and yet it's very difficult to traverse in this cube-like environment. So the question now is, and I think a lot of people are wanting to ask this, how did you actually get into the ship itself? Well, obviously there is the part of the glitch which I'm not going to explain because Hoyo might probably patch it, but once you break into the cube you teleport. Well, not really teleport, but let me explain what happens here with Chaska. So basically it's very difficult to move inside the cube, and if you do try to move from one section to another, you get instantly yeeted to another section of the cube, or sometimes even flung outside of the cube, which is something that can happen. I'll show it here in slow-mo just so that you can see, but effectively the way I got into the cube is I used a glitch, and if I got lucky, I got forced into a certain spot. It's almost like you've got certain valid locations that you can teleport to. And once you're there, and you can see here with Kokomi, you're just like sliding down. There are certain places where you can stand, certain places you can move, others you can't, and it's just a giant mess, because not only do you have this constant pressure on the character, you've also got random collisions inside the cube, which makes it very, very difficult to move. Here is Supersonic Kokomi. I'm just illustrating on outside like of the ship area. There are like few collisions, but you can see here on the dock area, it takes forever. This is like sped up by 3 times for you to move like throughout the entire ship. And there are also a couple of other things that I have to mention. You cannot swap characters whilst you're inside the cube, which makes life a bit more difficult. You can use certain abilities like your E ability, but you won't be able to traverse vertically. And also, as you like progress throughout the ship area, if you want to go from one spot to another spot, you'll just be like teleported, like if you jump off the ledge over there, which is kind of funny. But okay, back to the question at hand. Can we touch the ship from here? The answer is no, because there is this entire barrier around the ship, and basically any projectiles won't be able to go through it. I've explained this in my Arlecchino boss domain video, but effectively the ship's got a one-sided collision, and anything on the outside will not be able to penetrate, so you'd have to go inside the ship, which is very, very difficult. But I definitely surveyed the entire ship. It's got a barrier around it, so not only do you have this cube, but you've got inside the cube an entire barrier, which is very, very annoying. And here you can see me just basically, because there's like the teleport barrier under the map, I can use Chaska and just a bit of an internet disconnect to see exactly, you know, and trace out the boundaries of the ship. But trust me, the entire thing is covered by a collision barrier, which is really, really funny. You can't actually go through it. But the question that you can ask yourself is, if I can't go through it, can I at least teleport to within it? And the answer is yes. So here with Kokomi, and this is something that is so difficult to actually do. I got this by chance. You can, like I showed earlier, you can teleport to certain sections, and I couldn't get the full recording of this, which was really, really annoying, but I did get the tail end of it, which you'll see here. I desperately tried to press the replay button, and I panicked and whatever when I did this when I got this the first time. But in any case, you can see Kokomi definitely goes through the bottom, or the hole there at the bottom of the ship. She phases through, and if you'll notice in just a bit, boom, did you see that little bump there? That's effectively Kokomi exiting the one-sided barrier from within the ship. So it does show you that the ship itself is, in my opinion, not entirely solid, and that basically they just modeled the outside of it to have collision. Maybe they did this so that in one of the cutscenes the water would just naturally flow off of it on the outside. I've got no idea what Hoya was thinking. In any case, that is my assessment of the Wriothesley ship. I think that is the mystery solved. You cannot physically touch it, you cannot stand on it or move on it, because A, it doesn't really exist, it's just a thin PNG, and there is an entire collision barrier around it. It took quite a bit of a while to figure this out, and honestly, I'm getting a bit tired of the ship. But you might now ask the question, well, are these observations true elsewhere in Teyvat? And the answer is yes. So, as explained in my Fossil Laws video, there's another teleport domain glitch for certain domains that we can use. And here, obviously, in Kokomi's domain where you farm the Ocean Hue Clamp set, you can go quite far out of bounds if you know how to avoid certain teleport barriers. And what you'll find are a lot of structures. It almost looks like, you know, we're flying here in Celestia. And effectively, all of these buildings that you can see, well, most of the little square buildings, and not the archways, have collision on them, but it's not the actual building being physically modeled with collision, like for instance a building in Teyvat, more so that there is a collision layer or invisible barrier placed across or over the entire building, which is like really, really funny. So this is a typical strategy that Hoyo does to, I don't know why they do it, maybe it's just like to save some storage space on devices and so on, but you can see here we can't phase through the building. We can only stand on top of it, presumably on an invisible layer. And I think that is basically what you see here in Teyvat. You've got lots of objects and places where, in order to maybe save on rendering, the Genshin team will place these invisible barriers. Maybe they've even intended for some of these areas to be playable, and they've forgotten that there are invisible barriers on it, but what you see with Wriothesley ship is definitely replicable, or at least it's a very common occurrence if you go out of bounds in Genshin Impact, which is something I really like to do. And obviously the other thing that I like to do a lot is, well, take Kokomi pictures, because I mean, just the scene change with her ult can give you sometimes a very, very pretty view. In this case, it didn't really work out, and I'm too lazy to redo the whole glitch just to get another shot at using her elemental burst. But in any case, okay, we're gonna start wrapping up the video right now, and you'll see me jumping off the building, and we're gonna constantly be colliding with that little one-sided barrier here. There is not much that we can do from that point onwards, and then I'm just gonna let Kokomi fall to her doom, and she'll teleport very, very quickly back to the start. So there is still the big teleport barrier under the map, and we teleported, and there we go, we're back in the domain. Alright everyone, it's been a pleasure having you around. Thank you so much if you've made it this far to watching the video. We cover a lot of out of bounds stuff that's very, very interesting and certain mysteries. And yeah, if you've got any suggestions or questions, let me know in the comment section. I can't share certain methods because Hoya might patch them, but I do try my best to give you also a bit of a sense of the adventure. Alright, thank you for watching. Cheers!